Well, I'm really excited about what I'm about to get to do. It's not very often that I get to speak with a legitimate TV icon. Butch Patrick, are you there?
Yeah.
Man, this is a real treat for me. Thank you for taking a little time with us today. Man, I grew up watching you, and there are few shows on TV that are timeless, that stand up today and are just as entertaining. You know, things like Andy Griffith's Show, The Three Stooges. There were two other shows, and I'm gonna be honest. There was the Addams Family, and then there was the Munsters. And I always felt like there was like a rivalry between those two shows. I always went with the Munsters for one reason: Eddie Munster.
Thank you.
Eddie,
Yes, sir?
now that your problem is solved, have you learned a lesson?
I think so.
What?
I'll never tell Mom I don't like her homemade soup again.
That's not what I had in mind.
It isn't?
The lesson I want you to learn is it doesn't matter what you look like. You can be tall or short, or fat or thin, or ugly, or handsome, like your father. You can be black or yellow or white. It doesn't matter. What does matter is the size of your heart and the strength of your character.
You know, it's funny. There's a few strange occurrences, like a sort of a perfect storm occurred in the mid-'60s. Not only the decade itself for being pop culture and black and white television still being, the fixture up to the mid-'60s and the Munsters being part of that. You had two shows very similar in nature, the Addams Family and the Munsters, one Thursday night, us, them on Friday night. And the good part about it is because we weren't head-to-head competition, it wasn't one or the other. You could watch them both.
Right.
You probably did, but you preferred one or the other. But we actually both helped in each other's existence, which was unique.
It was kind of weird that what was it about that time in the 60s that we needed more dark humor in our life, I wonder?
Well, you had, yes, to a point, but you got to remember, you had a very interesting group of shows that were very big hits in comedy that had no basis in reality whatsoever. You had Talking Horses with Mr. Ed.
Yeah.
You had My Favorite Martian with Ray Walston and Bill Bixby in his first series. You had Bewitched, hugely successful. I Dream of Jeannie.
You actually were on a few of those shows before the Munsters started.
Yeah, I was on all of them except Bewitched. And the fact that the climate of the country was such that people wanted to come home and be I mean, my dad, who was a very classy, upscale guy, his favorite show a year or two later was the Flintstones, which was obviously a remake of the Honeymooners in animation form.
Well, let's step back. I'm all excited. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go back to around 1960. A young Butch Patrick. Your real name is Patrick
Lilly.
Butch was sort of a nickname?
Yeah, it was a nickname given to me the day I was born by my grandmother, yes.
Sweet. And Butch Patrick, that's a solid name. And I know you did 20 commercials and like a dozen or so movies before you even auditioned for the Munsters.
Yeah, and the Real McCoys for a year and General Hospital for a half a year. I did a lot of guest starring roles in the early 60s on shows like, like I said, Mr. Ed, My Favorite Martian. But I did a lot of Westerns.
Gunsmoke, Rawhide. I'm excited about that. Bonanza, even. Did you want to be an actor, or was this something your parents thought, we've got an entertaining little guy here, let's take him to Hollywood?
Nope. No, it was an accidental situation. Went along for a photo shoot for my little sister to have some photographs taken about maybe her doing some modeling, little girl modeling stuff for magazines, and I was sitting around, and the guy that took those photos was like the number one Hollywood kid photographer named Amos Carr. All the kids in Hollywood had their pictures done by Amos Carr. It was pretty much the gold standard. So he looked at me and he said, "Do you mind if I take a couple pictures of Butch, because I really like his look?" And it was for his own personal advertisement to put in his window of his photography studio, which happened to be on Hollywood Boulevard. And then after he put this picture he took of me in the window, a producer and a director were walking by and noticed it and sought me out through that chance meeting via a picture in a window on Hollywood Boulevard. And I got my first role co-starring in a little B movie with Eddie Albert and Jane Wyatt, Soupy Sales, Nancy Culp, and Brenda Lee, which was called The Two Little Bears. And then during that 6-week period, I picked up the Kellogg's Cornflakes commercial that won pretty good. I think it won an award for the best commercial of the year. And then it also got me to General Hospital as well. I was over there doing that. So it was a chance situation that my mom says, do you want to do this movie for 6 weeks? And I go, well, I guess I won't have to go back to school, right? And she goes, no. I said, well, there, let's do it. And I knew I was making money that someday would come in handy because I wanted to be a race car driver. From the time I could, ride my bicycle and have model cars and slot cars, that was what I wanted to do, was be a race car driver. And I thought this money would come in handy.
Fast cars and surfboards.
Here you go.
I don't even know where to start with this question. How old were you when you started doing the Munsters?
7.
7 years old. I mean, you actually had like a real personality. Like it was in the opening sequence. You kind of get the little pat on the head out the door. You roll your eyes. Yeah. And it's like you're acting, and it's genuine and it's real. And you were like a real character that little boys especially could relate to. And to think about what it would be like growing up in that house with that family and that pet Spot, by the way.
Yeah. A couple things back to the sort of the perfect storm for the Munsters is because it is first of all, it's a one-of-a-kind show. You can, it's similar to the Addams Family, but the Addams Family didn't have the special effects and the makeup and all the things that we had. It was basically based on a comic strip by Charles Addams, and it was dark humor, but it wasn't the Munsters. The Munsters was vastly different and a vastly bigger dynamic because they were taking advantage of the Universal Monster studio and all the talents that Universal had put forth to create this whole stable of great monster movies. And then they had to Leave It to Beaver producers who had a very successful family-oriented show for 6 years, and this was the combination of that and this. So what happened was, in a unique situation, I got to play myself. I just happened to have a lot of makeup on, so that was easy because I didn't have to really act. I just had to remember my lines and go about my business, and it worked. We had great actors. We had great makeup. We had good special effects. We had cool sets and music and cars. So all the way down the line, this unique little 2-year show came together in a magical way that today resonates that because it's still extremely popular. It's extremely well merchandised. People remember the Munsters theme. They remember the cars. They like to wear the merchandise. They collect the stuff. If you had to pick a show to be part of, it was maybe the top 10 shows of all time with, Star Trek and Andy Griffith and Twilight Zone, but the Munsters is right up there.
I mean, the collectible side of it is vast. But were you a fan of the Universal Monsters, Frankenstein?
Yeah.
And so
what
was that like as a kid becoming a part of this?
I made all the Aurora models. And I built car models as well. But yeah, I was a fan of the Universal Monsters. I did. I think I still am. I like the older pre-CG, pre-slasher movies, all the blood and guts for blood and guts' sake. I prefer the old storylines of the Dracula, Frankenstein monsters, Wolfman, all of the, Phantom of the Opera, all of the Invisible Man. They're all good.
Quick question: being Eddie Mustard, was that something that the ladies kind of dug as you were a young man?
I was 11 years old.
As you got older.
Yeah, oh yeah. As I got older, yeah. Eddie's been good to me. No problem there.
Let's talk about Eddie and the Monsters. You actually went on to have a band.
I actually had in 1970, Eddie and the Monsters was 1982, 1983. In 1972, 1973, I did Metro Media Records after the producers who were handling Sugarloaf found out that Bobby Sherman had been let go, and Metro Media was looking for another teeny bop star to replace him. Mm-hmm. And I had completed Lidsville, so I was on Saturday morning. I was in a lot of teen magazines and kind of a bubblegum, heartthrobby, mini version of David Cassidy and Donny Osmond type thing.
Right.
I did a couple of records for Metro Media, and actually was on American Bandstand, and I actually I headlined over Loggins and Messina of all things. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Crazy. But I couldn't sing, and they knew that up front. So I said, I'm not a singer. Doesn't matter. We'll fake it. So I like to say I was the original Munster Manilli, long before Millie. And
hey, AC/DC stole your act.
Well, that led, and it was fun because we didn't really go anywhere with it because you couldn't really perform live. But I did live like a rock star for a year and had a record company spending gobs amount of money on us, and we traveled everywhere and had all the groupies and all.
Oh, that had to be terrible. Yeah, it had to be a terrible.
Oh yeah, that was horrible. No, everybody needs to be a rock star for 1 year. It really, it's a must do. Bucket list stuff.
I'll put that on my list.
But when Eddie and the Monsters came out, that was a whole different dynamic because MTV had come on the air, and a friend of mine who was a drummer knew a producer with a recording studio down in Long Beach called Sound Sorcery. And what we did is I had this idea and the lyric for a Munsters theme called Whatever Happened to Eddie, which we then turned into a rock video because we thought that would be a good vehicle to make other rock videos. And we were the first unsigned video ever to be on MTV without a record deal, which led to the Basement Tapes, which led to a lot of exposure for unknown talent that had videos but no record deals. So
that's cool.
I like to think I might have helped a few people gain a leg up in the business.
Did you ever see Ben Stiller's TV show?
Oh, sure.
Where they, what was it, Cape Munster? I think was the...
Yeah, Cape Munster was great.
It was brilliant.
I loved it.
Sam Bowden and his family have just come to New Essex, and so has his past.
I'm scared. I hardly even remember him. It was 20 years ago.
Eddie Munster in Cape Munster.
I was working for the network. He blames me for canceling the Munsters.
Come out, wherever you are!
It was brilliant. Yeah. I mean, I can't even imagine. That's a testament to how important that role was and how it's affected popular culture to this day.
Not only that, but on Saturday Night Live, he came out as Eddie Munster, but Dolly Parton was the host, and he came out and sat like on the Tonight Show couch and talked about being Eddie Munster. It was pretty funny. It was Sprocket. Dolly Parton was the host, and he came out as a guest on Sprockets with Michael Myers.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, the German-esque show.
Yeah, kiss my monkey. Now we down.
So what's it like being Butch Patrick these days? Or do you do Comic-Con circuit?
Yeah, I have done a lot of convention-related stuff over the years. I started long time ago when they were first firing him up. Because the Munsters is a family-oriented, evergreen show, I was always a good guest because everybody my age and younger and older, no matter where you were, once they see the Munsters, you enjoy it. So it doesn't really matter what age you are, and it's good for ticket sales and family values type of thing. So the Munsters is always an easy sell. I started doing it with Al Lewis and Pat Priest back in the 80s, right after the MTV thing. So, God, it's coming up on 40 years now. What I do now is, you mentioned the Munster coach, George Barris. I have my own personal Munster coach, and I got into the being a car guy all my life. I figured out a way to do mostly car-related events with my car going around the country as opposed to sitting at a table with autographs. I put the cars on display, bring out a lot of merchandise, various things. I have everything from books to buttons to T-shirts to this and that. And I basically am a traveling brick-and-mortar store of car-related Munster merchandise.
Well, if somebody was interested, and I know I've got a lot of collectors listening right now of car merchandise and TV memorabilia, how could folks find you on social media?
Well, it's really easy. Right now it's under construction, but in another week it should be back up. I've had Munsters.com for almost 30 years. That's about as easy as you can do. You can find me on social media, even on everything from Facebook to Instagram to Twitter. You just got to kind of look around. But Munsters.com or the official Munsters fan group will put you in touch with 24,000 other fans. They do a lot of interaction with each other to find themselves and to seek out and find interesting stuff for the club.
Now, I know the COVID situation has affected so many things. I'm sure you've seen a direct effect from it. Are you be able to get back on the road soon, or events starting to open back up?
I'm supposed to be on the road. I mean, everybody's in the same position, so it's kind of like, I would be out on the road myself. It doesn't really scare me, but I know that it scares a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is. And as soon as people are ready to go, I'll be waiting. And in the meantime, I'm just hunkering down like everybody else.
Right. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today. This has been I've had a few opportunities to speak with people from my childhood that really, and it's just huge for me. This is a piece of my childhood, and I just want to thank you for the effect you've had.
Childhoods are important, and that's one of the reasons why I continue to get out and tour and travel. Not only do I share an extended family of fans all over the world, but the kids who are just new into the Munsters get a kick out of meeting Eddie Munster in person.
Yeah.
So there's nothing more important than being part of a good childhood.
Right. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for owning it and embracing it that way. I know some people shy away from that sort of thing. It means a lot to the fans. We really do appreciate it.
All right, my friend. You take care.
You have a wonderful day. Thank you, Butch.
You're welcome.
All right, Mr. Butch Patrick, TV icon, Eddie Munster.